You know what holds most people back from really loving themselves? It's this constant, exhausting chase for approval. We want people to clap for us, to like us, to validate every choice we make. And sometimes, without even realizing it, our whole life becomes this performance. We're auditioning for love, for acceptance, for a little nod that says, "Hey, you're enough." And it's heartbreaking because deep down, we already know no amount of applause is ever going to fill the silence we feel inside when we don't believe it ourselves. The truth is, you will never get the kind of approval you think you need. Not from your parents, not from your boss, not from your friends, not even from a partner. Sure, people can encourage you, and that feels great. But when that's the only fuel in your tank, you're going to run out of gas real quick. Because here's the thing, people are inconsistent. Their moods shift, their opinions change, their standards are different from yours. And if your self-worth is attached to something that unstable, you're never going to feel steady. Think about it. How many times have you caught yourself making decisions not because you wanted to, but because you thought it would keep the peace? Or because you thought someone would finally notice you, appreciate you, approve of you, and what happens afterward? You're left feeling resentful, drained, maybe even invisible. Because the truth is, no matter how hard you try, not everyone is going to like you. Not everyone is going to clap for you, and if you spend your life bending yourself to earn approval, you're not actually being loved. You're just being tolerated, so let's flip it. What if you stopped waiting for approval you'll never get? What if you gave yourself permission to be who you are without running it through everyone else's filter first? Loving yourself enough means knowing your choices don't need to be signed by the crowd. It means you can stand in who you are, even if it makes some people uncomfortable. And let's be real, it will. Some people won't understand you. Some people will even criticize you. But if your goal is to be universally approved of, you're setting yourself up to lose before you even start. Now here's where the shift happens. When you start approving of yourself, something powerful changes. The pressure drops. You walk into a room differently. You speak differently. You're not looking around for someone to nod or smile or tell you, "Good job." Because you already know who you are, and you already know what you bring. And that kind of self-approval, it's magnetic. People can feel it. They may not even understand why, but they're drawn to it, because deep down, everybody is hungry for that same freedom. But here's the hard part. Self-approval doesn't show up overnight. It's not like you just snap your fingers, and suddenly you don't care what anyone thinks. It's a practice. It's catching yourself in the moment when you're about to do something just to get noticed, and asking, "Wait, do I actually want this? Or am I hoping they'll like me if I do it?" It's reminding yourself every day that your worth is not up for negotiation. It's not dependent on the crowd's reaction, it's set, and once you start living like that, you realize how much energy you get back, energy you were wasting on trying to convince people of your value. People who maybe never saw it in the first place. At the end of the day, loving yourself starts with this. Stop waiting for the stamp of approval that may never come. Approve of yourself first, and the rest will follow. One of the biggest turning points in learning to love yourself is realizing how you talk to yourself matters more than you think. You've heard the phrase, "If you wouldn't say it to a friend, don't say it to yourself." And I want you to really let that sink in for a moment, because if we're honest, most of us talk to ourselves in ways we would never talk to someone we love. We call ourselves names, we criticize every mistake, we replay every failure, and we do it without hesitation. It becomes this background noise that we don't even question, but it chips away at us piece by piece. Imagine a child learning to ride a bike. They fall, and instead of saying, "You're okay, try again," someone tells them, "You're pathetic, you'll never get this, why even try?" That kid wouldn't just stop riding the bike. They'd stop believing in themselves. That's exactly what happens when you tear yourself down with your own words. You're trying to live your life, to grow, to become something more, but the voice in your head is tripping you up before you even get started. Now let's flip that same scenario. The child falls, and instead of shame, they hear encouragement. They hear, it's all right, falling's part of it, you're learning, you'll get better. What happens? They try again. They build resilience. They believe in themselves because the voice guiding them is one that believes in them too. That's what happens when you choose to talk to yourself with kindness. You give yourself permission to grow. You create the space for progress instead of perfection. And listen, I get it. It feels unnatural at first. If you've spent years, maybe even decades, speaking harshly to yourself, kindness feels almost fake. You might think, I can't just say nice things to myself. That's cheesy, that doesn't fix anything. But here's the truth. Your words don't just describe your reality, they create it. The way you talk to yourself is the way you teach yourself to see the world, and more importantly, to see who you are in it. Think about how many times you've brushed off compliments because you didn't believe them. Someone says, "You did a great job," and you instantly reply, "Oh no, it wasn't that good." Why? Because the voice inside already convinced you you're not enough. That's how powerful self-talk is. It can override reality. So imagine if that inner voice started aligning with the truth instead of tearing it down. Imagine if you actually believed you were capable, worthy, and enough. This isn't about being delusional or pretending you're perfect. It's about being fair. You make mistakes, sure, but so does everyone else. You fall short sometimes, but so does everyone else. Loving yourself means choosing to extend the same grace to yourself that you're so quick to extend to others. You don't grow from being bullied by your own thoughts. You grow when you start to believe you're worth the effort. And here's what's beautiful. When you start talking to yourself differently, you start treating yourself differently. You show up with more confidence, not because the world changed, but because your words changed. You give yourself permission to try, to risk, to fail, and to get back up again, because the voice in your head isn't an enemy anymore, it's a coach, a friend, a source of strength. So, if you want to love yourself enough, start by changing the conversation you're having with yourself. Stop speaking words that tear you down and start speaking words that build you up. Because the truth is, you'll believe whatever you repeat the most. Do you want me to continue expanding key point 3 next so the speech keeps its natural momentum? If you really want to know whether you love yourself enough, look at your boundaries. Because the truth is, boundaries aren't just about keeping people out. They're about keeping yourself in. They're about saying, this is where I end and you begin. This is what I will allow, and this is what I won't. But for so many of us, that word, boundaries, feels heavy. It feels like conflict. It feels like rejection. So instead, we avoid it. We say yes when we mean no. We overextend. We tolerate things that eat away at us, all because we're afraid of what will happen if we draw the line. And here's the problem. Every time you say yes when you really want to say no, you chip away at your own self-respect. Every time you let someone cross a line you know they shouldn't, you're teaching yourself that your needs don't matter. And eventually, you start believing it. You start believing that peace means pleasing, that love means sacrifice without limits, that your worth is tied to how much you can carry for everyone else. But that's not love, that's neglect. Think about this. You lock the doors to your house at night, not because you hate the people outside, but because you value the people inside. That's what boundaries are. They're locked doors to your emotional house. They're not meant to punish others. They're meant to protect what's valuable. And the moment you realize your peace, your energy, your time, and your heart are valuable, you stop feeling guilty for protecting them. Yes, some people won't like it when you set boundaries. They've been comfortable with the version of you that always bends, that always accommodates, that always sacrifices. And when you stop doing that, they'll push back, they'll call you selfish, they'll say you've changed. And you know what? They're right. You have. You've changed because you finally decided to start honoring yourself the way you deserve. And here's what I want you to hear. The people who truly value you will adjust. The people who don't will fade, and that's not a loss, that's clarity. Now, let's be clear. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you're cold or unkind. It doesn't mean you stop helping people, stop showing up, stop giving. It means you give in a way that doesn't drain you dry. It means you show up with love that's genuine, not resentful. It means you protect your own well-being so that when you give, it comes from overflow, not from emptiness. This takes practice because the first few times you say no, it will feel wrong. It will feel uncomfortable. You'll second, guess yourself. You'll replay the conversation in your head and wonder if you were too harsh. But I promise you this, every time you honor your boundary, you're sending yourself a message. You're saying, I matter, my peace matters, my needs matter. And the more you repeat that, the more natural it becomes. At the end of the day, boundaries are not walls. They're doors. They let the right people in and keep the wrong energy out. They're a declaration that you love yourself enough not to abandon your own well-being for the sake of temporary approval. And if you want to love yourself enough, you have to stop apologizing for the doors you choose to lock. One of the hardest lessons to learn when it comes to loving yourself is that your worth isn't tied to how much you can produce. Somewhere along the way, we started believing that our value was measured in output, how many boxes we checked, how many hours we worked, how much we achieved compared to everyone else. And the problem with that is, it traps you in this cycle where rest feels like laziness, mistakes feel like failure, and slowing down feels like falling behind. You end up carrying this weight that says, if I'm not accomplishing something, I'm not enough. But here's the truth. You're not a machine. You're not built to just churn out results day after day. You're human. You have limits. You have needs. You have seasons where you're thriving and seasons where you're just surviving. And tying your worth to your productivity means that anytime life forces you to slow down, whether it's burnout, loss, sickness, or just exhaustion, you start to believe you're worthless. And that's not just unfair, it's a lie. Think about a newborn baby. What do they produce? Nothing. They can't work, they can't earn, they can't prove anything. And yet, we look at them and see value. Why? Because their worth is inherent. They're valuable because they exist. Somewhere along the line, we lose sight of that. We trade inherent value for conditional value, as if being human isn't enough anymore. But self-love means going back to that truth. You are valuable simply because you are here. And I get it. It's not easy to believe in a world that constantly measures us by numbers. Your grades, your bank account, your follower count, your job title, everything screams that your worth has to be proven. And if you're not careful, you'll start running after those numbers, thinking they'll finally make you feel whole. But the finish line always moves. No matter how much you accomplish, there's always someone doing more. And if you don't break that cycle, you'll spend your entire life chasing worth instead of living from it. Now, I'm not saying productivity is bad. Doing your best, setting goals, achieving things, those are good. But there's a difference between having goals and tying your worth to whether you reach them. Productivity is supposed to be an expression of your value, not the condition of it. It's supposed to come from a place of fullness, not desperation. The shift happens when you allow yourself to rest without guilt, when you fail at something and you remind yourself it doesn't reduce your worth, when you give yourself permission to exist as enough on the days when you don't cross a single thing off your list. Because self-love isn't about proving you're worthy, it's about believing you already are. And here's the beautiful part. When you actually detach your worth from your productivity, you end up producing more, not less. Why? Because you're not fueled by fear anymore. You're not running on the pressure of I have to do this or I'm nothing. You're running on joy, on purpose, on freedom. Work becomes lighter. Rest becomes restorative. Life becomes more than a scoreboard. It becomes an experience you actually get to enjoy. So if you want to love yourself enough, stop measuring who you are by what you do. Let your worth be the starting point, not the finish line. One of the quickest ways we rob ourselves of self-love is through comparison, and it's so easy to slip into it because everywhere you turn, someone looks like they're doing better. They've got the bigger house, the nicer car, the stronger relationship, the better body, the perfect life on display for everyone to see. And without even realizing it, you start stacking your life against theirs. You scroll through social media, and suddenly what you have doesn't look like enough. You walk into a room, and instead of owning your space, you measure yourself against everybody else in it. And that constant comparison, it's not just exhausting, it's destructive. Because comparison isn't really about them, it's about you abandoning yourself. When you compare, you stop appreciating your own journey. You take your story, your growth, your progress, and you throw it away because you're too busy watching someone else's highlight reel. But here's the reality. You don't actually know their story. You don't know what it cost them to get where they are. You don't know what battles they're still fighting behind the scenes. And half the time, you're comparing your behind the scenes to their front stage. It's never a fair fight, and yet you convince yourself you're losing. Think about it like this. Two flowers can grow side by side. One may bloom sooner, one may bloom taller, but they don't spend their time comparing petals. They just grow. They focus on their soil, their sunlight, their roots, and that's the key. You don't need to bloom like anybody else. You need to bloom like you. Because what makes you valuable isn't how much you match someone else's progress. It's how much you lean into your own. And here's the hard truth. Comparison kills gratitude. The more you focus on what you don't have, the less you see what you do have. You stop noticing the small wins, the little joys, the progress you've actually made, because your eyes are glued to someone else's lane. But the moment you bring your focus back, the moment you start appreciating what's right in front of you, everything shifts. You realize maybe you're not as far behind as you thought. Maybe you've overcome things nobody even knows about. Maybe your story isn't about keeping up. It's about becoming. Now, does that mean you'll never compare again? No, you're human. The temptation will always be there. But the difference is learning how to catch it. Learning to pause when that thought shows up and ask yourself, is this helping me love myself more, or is it pulling me away from it? Because if it's pulling you away, you already know it's not worth your time. And let me say this, sometimes comparison disguises itself as motivation. You look at someone ahead of you and think, I need to be like them. And while it might push you in the short term, it will drain you in the long run because you can't sustain a life trying to be someone you're not. Real motivation doesn't come from comparison. It comes from appreciation, from recognizing your own growth, from celebrating the progress you've made, from knowing that your path is worth walking even if nobody else understands it. At the end of the day, loving yourself enough means refusing to abandon your lane for someone else's. Stop comparing and start appreciating, because your life isn't meant to be a copy, it's meant to be your own original. When it comes to loving yourself, one of the biggest mistakes we make is thinking we have to do it perfectly. Like if we're not confident every single day, if we still have moments of doubt, if we still stumble into old patterns, then somehow we've failed. But that's not how self-love works. It's not about perfection. It's about consistency. It's about showing up for yourself again and again, even when it doesn't look glamorous, even when it doesn't feel easy. Think about it like brushing your teeth. You don't do it once and say, "Okay, that's it, my teeth are clean forever." You do it every day, sometimes multiple times, because that's what keeps them healthy. Self-love is the same way. It's not one big moment where everything changes forever. It's the small, repeated choices you make every day that add up. It's choosing to speak kindly to yourself when your old habit is to tear yourself down. It's choosing to rest when your instinct is to push past exhaustion. It's choosing to forgive yourself instead of holding on to shame. These are small, consistent acts, but they build something strong over time. And here's the thing: consistency allows room for imperfection, because the truth is, you're going to have bad days. You're going to have moments when you slip back into comparison, when you question your worth, when you forget to set boundaries or ignore your own needs. That doesn't mean you don't love yourself. It just means you're human. What matters is what you do after. Do you throw it all away because you weren't perfect, or do you come back, try again, and keep moving forward? Self-love that lasts is built on the second choice. Perfection says, if I can't do this flawlessly, I shouldn't even try. Consistency says, even if I stumble, I'll keep showing up. And showing up for yourself. That's where the real transformation happens. You don't have to be perfect to make progress. You don't have to be flawless to be worthy. You just have to keep choosing yourself, day after day, moment after moment. It's the same way you build trust in a relationship. Trust doesn't come from someone being perfect. It comes from them showing up consistently, proving over time that they mean what they say. The same is true with yourself. You start to trust yourself when your actions line up with the love you say you deserve. When you repeatedly honor your needs, when you keep those promises to yourself, even in small ways, that's when you start believing, deep down, that you are enough. And the beauty of consistency is that it compounds. One kind word to yourself might not change much, but 100 of them will. One boundary set might feel uncomfortable, but setting them consistently rewrites the story of how you value yourself. One day of rest might not heal you, but making rest a consistent practice can restore your life. That's the power of showing up again and again, imperfectly but faithfully. So don't pressure yourself to love every part of who you are in every single moment. That's not realistic. But do commit to the practice of coming back to yourself, of choosing yourself in the small ways that add up over time. Because self-love isn't proven in how perfect you can be. It's proven in how consistent you're willing to be. At the end of the day, you don't need to love yourself perfectly. You just need to love yourself enough to keep choosing it again and again.